document begins. Rain tapped softly against the wide glass doors of the Grand Meridian Hotel, a steady rhythm that matched the tired footsteps of the woman who pushed through them. She wasn't dressed like most guests who walked into this place. No designer coat, no glossy handbag, no entourage. Just a dark wool coat that had seen better days, a simple scarf wrapped loosely around her neck, and a worn leather satchel slung over one shoulder. Her shoes clicked faintly against the marble floor, drowned out by the low hum of classical music and the murmur of conversation from the lounge nearby. She paused just inside, letting her eyes adjust to the warm golden light after the gray chill of the evening outside. The lobby stretched out before her, high ceilings, plush sofas, fresh flowers on every surface, and that unmistakable scent of polished wood and expensive candles. It was the kind of place where people came to feel important, to be seen, to escape the ordinary. But she wasn't here for any of that. She was here to see. She walked toward the front desk with quiet purpose. The marble countertop gleamed under recessed lighting, and behind it stood a young man in a crisp navy uniform, his name tag reading T. Reynolds. He was scrolling through something on his phone, one elbow propped on the counter, looking more bored than busy. When she stopped in front of him, he glanced up, just for a second before his eyes flicked back to his screen. "Good evening," she said, her voice calm, not too soft, not too firm. "Just steady." He looked up again, slower this time, as if deciding whether she was worth his attention. "Hi, checking in?" "Yes," she said. "I have a reservation under Voss Enterprises." He tapped a few keys, his expression unreadable. After a moment, he shook his head slightly. "I'm not seeing anything under that name." She didn't flinch. "It should be under tonight. Suite 1214, corporate account." He typed again, more deliberately this time, then leaned back in his chair. "Still nothing. Maybe it got canceled, or you're thinking of a different hotel." She pulled a folded confirmation email from her satchel and handed it over. The paper was slightly damp from the rain, but the details were clear. Grand Meridian, Atlanta, Octobre 20, 2025, Suite 204, paid in full by Voss Hospitality Group. He skimmed it without really reading it. System's probably glitching," he said, handing it back. "But even if it were real, that suite's already been assigned to a VIP guest arriving later tonight. We can't just give it away. I am the guest," she said gently. He let out a small, almost imperceptible laugh. More of a breath, really, but it carried a tone. Like she'd just told a harmless joke. He glanced past her toward the entrance as if expecting someone more. Fitting, to walk in behind her. "Look," he said, lowering his voice just enough to sound confidential. "We get people all the time who try to bluff their way into a room. Happens more than you'd think. I appreciate the effort, but this isn't a shelter. We've got standards." She didn't argue. Didn't raise her voice. Didn't even sigh. She just stood there for a moment watching him. There was no anger in her eyes, just something deeper. Disappointment, maybe. Or recognition. Like she'd seen this before in other places, other faces. She nodded once, slowly, then stepped back from the counter. "All right," she said simply. She turned and walked toward a cluster of armchairs near the grand piano, where a few guests sat sipping wine. She chose one in the corner, set her satchel on the floor beside her, and took out her phone. Her fingers moved quickly but calmly over the screen. No drama, no scene, just quiet action. Back at the desk, T. Reynolds watched her go, then rolled his eyes slightly before turning to greet a couple who'd just entered. Well-dressed, laughing, the man holding a sleek briefcase. "Welcome to the Grand Meridian," he said, his voice suddenly bright and warm. "Checking in?" As he handed them key cards and offered a complimentary bottle of champagne for your anniversary, the woman in the armchair typed a short message. "Front desk just denied me my own room. Sending you the footage." She attached a short video she'd discreetly recorded, a few seconds of the exchange. Nothing incriminating, just enough to show tone, body language, the casual dismissal. She wasn't angry. Not really. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened, and she doubted it would be the last. But it still stung, not because of the insult to her, but because of what it said about the culture inside this hotel. A place she'd built, a brand she'd poured her life into, and yet, here she was, invisible in her own house. She watched as the couple was escorted toward the elevators by a bellhop, all smiles and gratitude. She thought about the housekeepers who'd cleaned that suite that morning, the kitchen staff prepping room service meals, the security guard who'd nodded politely as she walked in. Hard-working people, most of them. But somewhere in the chain, something had gone wrong. Someone had decided that appearance mattered more than respect, that assumptions were faster than verification. Outside, the rain picked up, drumming harder against the windows. Inside, the lobby stayed warm, elegant, perfectly controlled. But beneath the surface, something was off balance. And she knew with the certainty that comes from years of building something from nothing, that this moment, small as it seemed, was a crack in the foundation. She didn't move to leave. She didn't call for a manager. She just sat observing, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait, watch, let the truth reveal itself without your help. 5 minutes passed. Then 6. The front desk agent was now chatting with a colleague, laughing about something on his phone. The couple was gone. The piano player began a new song, something soft, familiar. And the woman in the corner? She stood up slowly, smoothed her coat and walked not toward the exit but down a quiet hallway marked management offices. Her steps were quiet, but deliberate. Like someone who knew exactly where she was going and why. Document ends. Document begins. 3 months later, the rain fell again. Soft, steady, the kind that made the city feel hushed and thoughtful. She stood outside the Grand Meridian Hotel, not in a worn coat this time, but in a simple gray trench, her satchel slung over one shoulder just like before. She hadn't told anyone she was coming. No alerts, no special instructions. Just another guest arriving on a quiet Tuesday evening. The glass doors slid open automatically. Inside, the lobby looked the same. Marble floors, fresh flowers, soft piano music, but something felt different. Not in the decor, but in the air. There was a calmness, a kind of quiet confidence in the way people moved. The front desk wasn't bustling with performative charm. It was steady, attentive, unhurried. A young woman stood behind the counter, her name tag reading L. Chen. She looked up the moment the door opened, met the visitor's eyes and smiled, not the wide, practiced grin of someone trained to impress, but a genuine warm acknowledgement. "Good evening," she said. "Welcome back," the words landed softly. Not because she'd been recognized, she hadn't, but because the staff had been taught to greet every returning guest as if they mattered. And somehow that small shift made all the difference. "I have a reservation," the woman said, stepping forward. "Under Voss." The agent nodded, fingers already moving over the keyboard. "Yes, Dr. Voss, Suite 1204, we've been expecting you." She didn't sound nervous. She sounded ready, no hesitation, no second guessing. Just smooth, respectful service. As the agent handed over the key card, she added, "Housekeeping left a note. They remembered you liked the lavender pillow spray last time. They've included it again, a small detail, but it spoke volumes." She took the key, thanked the agent, and walked toward the elevators. On the wall near the hallway, a new sign had been mounted, simple black lettering on a light wood panel. "Every guest is someone's story. Treat them like yours." She paused for just a second, then smiled to herself. It wasn't corporate jargon. It was human. Upstairs, the suite was exactly as she'd left it, but cleaner, fresher, arranged with care. On the bedside table sat a small card in neat handwriting. "Hope your stay feels like coming home." The team. No titles, no flattery. Just warmth. She unpacked slowly, her mind drifting back to the past 90 days. The changes hadn't happened overnight. There had been meetings, missteps, honest conversations that sometimes got uncomfortable. The retraining program had sparked resistance at first. Some staff grumbled about extra work. Others worried they'd be punished for honest mistakes. But then something shifted. When housekeepers and kitchen staff started joining leadership huddles, when front desk agents spent a day folding towels or prepping breakfast trays, walls began to come down. People started seeing each other, not as roles but as teammates. The young agent who'd turned her away, he'd completed the program, shadowed housekeeping for a week, and even volunteered to help redesign the guest verification checklist. He still worked the front desk, but now he asked questions instead of making assumptions. And when a woman in worn shoes and a faded jacket checked in last month, he didn't blink. He verified her reservation, offered her a room upgrade because a cancellation had just come through, and wished her a restful stay. No fanfare, just decency. That was the real victory. Not policy changes on paper, but behavior changes in real time. She walked to the window and looked out over the city. Lights shimmered through the rain. Cars moved like slow fireflies on wet streets. Below, a couple hurried under one umbrella, laughing as they splashed through a puddle. Normal life. Human life. Her phone buzzed. A message from the regional director. "Heard you checked in. Everything okay?" She typed back. "Better than okay. Feels like we're finally living what we promised." She didn't need to inspect rooms or quiz staff this time. She could feel it, the difference. It was in the way the night porter nodded as he passed her in the hall, not with deference but with quiet respect. It was in the way the concierge offered local recommendations without pushing expensive tours. It was in the silence that no longer felt cold, but peaceful. Later that evening, she went down to the lounge for a cup of tea. The piano player was new, a retired music teacher who played for tips and conversation. He smiled when she sat nearby. "First time here?" He asked. "No," she said, "but it feels like the first time it's truly been what it's meant to be." He didn't ask what she meant. Maybe he understood. Maybe he'd seen the shift too. Before bed, she wrote a short note of her own, not for corporate files, but for the team bulletin board. "Thank you for remembering that hospitality isn't about perfection. It's about people." And tonight I felt like one of them. The next morning, she checked out early. The same agent was on duty. "Leaving so soon?" she asked gently. "Just passing through," the woman replied, "but I'll be back." As she stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, fresh. A street sweeper hummed in the distance. She took a deep breath, then walked toward the subway station. Blending into the morning crowd, just another person, heading somewhere carrying her own story. And somewhere behind her, in a gleaming hotel that finally felt like a home, a new guest walked in, tired, uncertain, maybe a little nervous. The front desk looked up, smiled, and said, "Welcome. How can we help you today?" No judgment, no list. Just an open door. That was the legacy she wanted. Not plaques on walls or headlines in magazines. Just a place where anyone, no matter what they wore or how they spoke, could walk in and feel seen. Not as a transaction, but as a human being. And in that quiet moment, as the city woke around her, she knew they were getting closer. Document ends. Document begins. The hallway leading to the management offices was quiet, carpeted in deep burgundy, the kind that swallowed sound. Fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead, a stark contrast to the warm glow of the lobby. She walked slowly, not because she was unsure, but because she wanted to give herself a moment, to steady her breath, to choose her words carefully. Anger wouldn't help here. Shame wouldn't either. What she needed was clarity. She stopped in front of a plain wooden door with a small brass plaque, General Manager, D. Patel. She didn't knock right away. Instead, she listened. Inside, someone was talking on the phone, voice low but urgent. "Yeah, I know the forecast said rain, but we've still got 3 no-shows. No, we can't just give away the penthouse. Not unless they're on the list." The phrase "on the list" made her pause. She knocked once, firm, not loud, and before anyone could answer, she turned the knob and stepped inside. The man behind the desk froze mid-sentence, phone still pressed to his ear. His eyes widened. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He slowly lowered the phone. "Dr. Voss?" She didn't smile, didn't frown, just nodded. "Evening." He stood so fast his chair rolled backward and clattered against the wall. Coffee sloshed over the rim of his mug, dark and steaming, pooling on a stack of occupancy reports. He didn't seem to notice. I didn't know you were coming." "No one said, I didn't tell anyone," she said gently. "That's the point." He swallowed hard, glancing at the door as if expecting someone to rescue him. But there was no rescue. Just the two of them and the quiet hum of the building around them. She walked over to the guest chair and sat down, placing her satchel on the floor beside her. "I just tried to check in," she said. "Front desk said there was no reservation." His face went pale. "That's impossible. Your suite's been blocked for weeks. I personally confirmed it this morning." "I showed him the email," she said. He didn't look at it closely. "Just handed it back and told me this isn't a shelter." The manager's shoulders slumped. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling like he'd been holding his breath for minutes. "I'm so sorry," he said, voice cracking slightly. Completely unacceptable. She watched him carefully. He wasn't making excuses. That counted for something. "Call him in," she said. He hesitated for only a second before picking up the desk phone and pressing a button. "T, please come to my office, now." A minute later, the young front desk agent appeared in the doorway, still in his Navy uniform, name tag gleaming. He looked confused at first, maybe even a little annoyed, until he saw her sitting there. His expression shifted instantly, confusion to surprise, then to something like dread. "Close the door," the manager said. The agent did. His hands suddenly stiff at his sides. The woman didn't stand. She just looked at him, calm and direct. "Do you know who I am?" He shook his head slowly. "No, ma'am. I'm the reason this hotel exists," she said. "I founded the company that owns it. My name is on the reservation you just denied." His eyes darted to the manager, then back to her. His throat moved as he swallowed. I didn't realize." "I know you didn't," she said. That's exactly the problem. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The weight of what she said hung in the air like smoke. The manager stepped in quickly. "T, this is Dr. Voss, CEO of Voss Hospitality." The young man's face went blank for a second, like his brain was struggling to catch up. Then it hit him. His shoulders dropped. "Oh my God," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I swear I didn't mean—" "I believe you," she interrupted softly. "You didn't mean to disrespect me. You just didn't think I could be who I said I was, and that's what worries me." He looked down at his shoes. I thought maybe you were confused. Or, I don't know. I've had people try to what?" she asked. "Get a free room? Because they looked like they couldn't afford one." He didn't answer. She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me something. When that couple walked in right after me, the ones in the nice coats, did you check their reservation before offering them champagne and an upgrade?" He hesitated. "Well, no. But they looked like regulars. And Mr. Patel said we should prioritize high-value guests during peak demand." "High value," she repeated. "Based on what? Their clothes? Their confidence? The way they walk?" He stayed silent. She turned to the manager. "Did you tell your team to curate the guest experience?" He winced. "I may have used that word, but I meant it as filtering people," she finished, "deciding who deserves warmth and who gets suspicion." "That's not curation. That's bias wearing a fancy suit." The room fell quiet again. Outside, a car passed on the wet street, tires hissing softly against the pavement. She looked back at the young agent. "How long have you worked here?" 6 months, he said quietly. "And before that?" "Community college. Part-time at a coffee shop," she nodded. "So you've been on both sides of the counter. You know what it feels like to be judged by your uniform or the lack of one?" He nodded slowly. "Then why do it to someone else?" He didn't have an answer, but his eyes glistened just slightly, and that told her more than words could. He wasn't a bad person. He was just tired, maybe a little overwhelmed, and trained to take shortcuts. And somewhere along the way, those shortcuts had turned into habits. She stood up. "I'm not here to fire you," she said. "But I am here to make sure this doesn't happen again, to you or to anyone else who walks through those doors." She turned to the manager. "Cancel my suite. I'll stay elsewhere tonight. But tomorrow morning I want every department head in the conference room by 8. We're reviewing every guest interaction policy, and we're starting with how we define value." The manager nodded quickly. "Yes, absolutely." She picked up her satchel, then paused at the door. "One more thing," she said, looking back at the young agent. "Next time someone shows you a reservation, read it. Really read it. Don't assume, because the person standing in front of you might be exactly who they say they are, and more than you ever imagined." Then she left, her footsteps quiet on the carpet, heading not for the exit, but for the staff break room down the hall. She had a few more conversations to have before the night was over, because real change didn't start at the top. It started with listening to the people who actually ran the place one guest at a time. Document ends. Document begins. She didn't go back to the lobby. Instead, she turned down another hallway, narrower, less polished, lined with doors marked staff only. The air here smelled different, faintly of laundry detergent, coffee, and the warm yeast of bread from the kitchen down the hall. This was the real heartbeat of the hotel, the part guests never saw but depended on completely, and it was here, among the people who kept the place running, that she knew she'd find the truth. Her first stop was the housekeeping break room. It was small, with a dented microwave, a bulletin board covered in shift schedules, and a coffee pot that had seen better days. Two women sat at a folding table, peeling oranges and laughing quietly. They looked up when she entered, surprised but not alarmed. "Evening," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" One of them, a woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun, nodded toward an empty chair. "Be our guest." She sat, setting her satchel on the floor. "I'm just checking in," she said. "How's the week been?" They exchanged a glance, then the younger one sighed. "Busy, always busy, but something's off lately." "Off how?" she asked gently. "The front desk," the older woman said, peeling an orange segment carefully. "They've been sending up notes like 'no guest seems low income, double-check minibar,' or, couple looks young, verify credit card again. Never used to be like that." The younger one nodded. "Last week I cleaned a room for a woman who'd been traveling with her kids. Toys everywhere, laundry piled up. Front desk called twice to ask if she'd paid. Like, why would I lie about that?" She listened without interrupting. These weren't complaints, they were observations. The kind that only come from people who see everything, but are rarely asked what they think. "Did management say anything about changing how you treat guests?" she asked. "Not directly," the older woman said, "but there's been pressure to protect the brand, while whatever that means." She knew what it meant. It meant someone had decided that luxury required exclusion, that to keep the hotel premium, they had to keep certain people out, or at least make them feel unwelcome. She stayed with them for 20 minutes, not as a CEO, but as someone who'd once sat in a break room just like this, eating a cold sandwich between shifts. She asked about their families, their commutes, what they liked most about the job. They talked about the joy of making a tired traveler smile, the pride in a perfectly made bed, the quiet camaraderie of early mornings. None of it was about profit margins or occupancy rates. It was about people. Next, she walked to the kitchen. The head chef was elbow-deep in prep for tomorrow's breakfast service, but he wiped his hands and greeted her with a tired but warm smile. When she asked about guest interactions, he didn't hesitate. "We've had complaints," he said, lowering his voice. "Guests saying room service took too long, but half the time it's because front desk flagged their order for verification. By the time it reaches us, the food's cold." "Flagged how?" she asked. "Just notes in the system. Unfamiliar guest. No history with us." "Like that means they're going to steal the silverware." She nodded. It was the same pattern. Assumptions replacing facts, suspicion replacing service. Her last stop was security. The guard on duty was a retired firefighter with kind eyes and a calm presence. He recognized her immediately, not from corporate photos, but from the way she carried herself. "You're the one who started all this, aren't you?" he said, not unkindly. "I hope so," she replied. "In the right way." He leaned against the desk. "I've been watching the lobby cameras all night. Saw what happened. And I've seen it before. Same agent, same look on his face when certain guests walk in." "Why didn't you say something?" she asked. He shrugged. "Not my place. I'm here to keep people safe, not fix culture." He paused. "But if you're asking now, I'd say the problem isn't one person. It's the message they've been sent." She thanked him and walked back toward the elevators, her mind full but clear. The issue wasn't malice. It was a slow drift, a culture that had started valuing image over integrity, speed over care, appearance over truth. And it had happened quietly, in small decisions made every day. The next morning, she arrived at the hotel at 7:45 a.m., this time in a simple blouse and slacks, no coat, no disguise. She walked straight into the conference room, where department heads sat nervously around a long table. Front desk, housekeeping, food and beverage, security, HR. The young agent from the night before sat in the corner, eyes down, hands clasped tightly. She didn't start with blame. She started with thanks. "Last night," she said, "I spoke with some of the hardest working people in this building. They reminded me why we do this. Not for awards or 5-star ratings, but because someone's long day ends here. And we get to make it better." She looked around the room. "But somewhere along the way we forgot that. We started treating guests like risks instead of people. And that stops today." She laid out a plan, not a punishment, but a reset. Mandatory bias awareness training co-developed with staff, a new guest verification process that focused on facts, not feelings, and a simple rule. If someone shows you a reservation, believe them until proven otherwise, not the other way around. Then she did something unexpected. She invited the housekeeping team, the kitchen staff, and the night security guard to join the leadership meetings once a month. "Because you see what we don't," she said. "And your voices matter more than you know." The young agent raised his hand. "What about me?" he asked quietly. She looked at him. "You're not fired. But you're not excused either. You'll go through the retraining program with your team, and you'll shadow housekeeping for a week so you can see what happens after you hand someone a key." He nodded, relief and shame mixing in his eyes. She didn't leave that day. She stayed through lunch, eating in the staff cafeteria, listening more than speaking, and by the time she walked out that evening, the air in the hotel felt different. Not perfect, but lighter. Like the first breath after a storm, because real change didn't come from shouting. It came from showing up, listening deeply, and reminding everyone, especially yourself, why you started in the first place. Document ends.